Has Putin's invasion of Ukraine inadvertently saved Taiwan from an invasion from China? The only person that knows for sure is Xi Jinping. He is the critical unknown variable in this tenuous situation. China will attempt to take Taiwan only if Xi issues the order. But assuming we are dealing with a rational actor, what are some observations Xi and the CCP might have taken away since Russia invaded Ukraine? Global condemnation across the Western world and steep economic backlash were devastating for Russia. They have only 5 allies: China, Belarus, Syria, North Korea, and Eritrea on the international stage, but at least 35 that don't want to pick a side. And despite economic numbers saying that Russia has been able to survive the sanctions, those numbers come from Russia, not worth the paper they're printed on. And while the ruble may well be rubble, and imports have been almost cut in half, and 1,000 out of 1,240 Western companies have pulled out, Russia and its people adapt and endure. Many imports had to be realigned or increased, primarily from China, Turkey, and India, but also many gray and black market opportunities have arisen and supported mitigating the effects of Western sanctions. Number two, a well-armed and trained Ukrainian force has been able to hold off and push back the lumbering behemoth of the Russian military. The Joint Multinational Training Group Ukraine has trained and advised Ukrainian military forces since 2015, and the CIA's elite ground branch has also been heavily involved in pre-war preparations. Number three, Russia, already going into a war with a declining population, exacerbated that decline as Russian citizens fled Russia by just shy of 4 million, with tens of thousands that have died in the war. Similar or even worse outcomes could plague a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. International condemnation and economic sanctions would be devastating to China. They import the majority of their energy and food from the US and her allies that could be cut off immediately or in phases depending on how the invasion would be executed. Taiwan has been receiving training and weapons from the US, much like the Ukrainians did. On top of that, Taiwan is a well-defended fortress island, an unsinkable aircraft carrier with underground runways, and mobile missile launchers with defense in depth capabilities. The Taiwan Straits is a virtual minefield of destruction that would turn into a Chinese ship graveyard. The shores leading up to Taiwan from the sea are laden with natural and man-made obstacles, barriers, and mines. China would face immense casualties transiting the straits, ship-to-shore maneuvers, and seizing of territory. No one knows what that type of loss of life would do to the psyche of the Chinese military and will to continue to fight. And everything I just listed would only be if it was a contained conflict between China and Taiwan, which it would immediately become a conflict between China and America and her allies. A full-blown world war would ensue. That said, this is an unlikely outcome, but not impossible, because we just don't know what Xi is thinking, or what he will decide, and because of that, it's impossible to know if it will ever happen. Conversely, Xi may be so rigid in his communist ideology and resolute in his desire to see a unified China before he dies, that he may give the order with a scorched Taiwan as an acceptable outcome, so long as a truly unified China is achieved. I hope that within this most dangerous scenario, he realizes that he would be plunging his country into famine and despair, as America would be forced to shut off China's access to Western food and energy, which they heavily rely on. And so, one of the main reasons we are making the invasion of Ukraine so difficult is to signal to Xi that the cost of a military invasion of Taiwan would be too much to bear. Unfortunately, for the more profitable reasons of war, we are dragging this out when we could bring to an abrupt end before the end of this year. And we would do this by providing them with necessary weapons and equipment such as the ATACMS and the F-16. They need it at scale to drive out Russia. But we'll drag this out to continue the flow of American taxpayer money as long as the American people allow it. And it's because of that war profiteering that Russia stands a chance of a modicum of success, because the longer we draw out the support for Ukraine, more likely neither side will make significant advancements, And once Russia has exhausted their resources, the American money would likely dry up, and neither side will get what they really want. Ukraine will still be independent, and Russia will have gained some annexed territories. Now, the war hawks in D.C. say that this outcome would be a victory for Putin, but this fear-based rhetoric needs to be dismissed by the rational among us. The evidence would not support such a ridiculous statement. A pariah nation with a demographic loss so extreme that they will likely never recover would not be a victory just because they annexed historically pro-Russian lands. At the end of this conflict, Putin may still be in power, but he will be residing over a country that has suffered a near-fatal wound by its own hand, only to be saved by the very man that may have the fate of the world in his hands.